Today, what I would like to speak with you about, though, is a subject that's dear to my heart, actually. It's a part of the relationship with God series of talks that I've been giving. And the subject is the eternal benefits of a relationship with God. So that's the subject. What I find when I discuss relationship with God with people is that generally most people don't understand the potential benefits of the relationship, and so most people don't view it as a very important part of their lives. And so this is why eventually religion sort of starts to have this concept of, I'll go along Sunday, and that's my contribution or the development of my relationship with God on one day of the week. And one of the main reasons why that happens is because there is really on earth very little concept of the benefits of having a relationship with God, and very little concept of how wide-reaching this relationship with God will have an effect in your entire life. And so that's why when in the first century we called the relationship with God the way. The reason why we called it the way was because it wasn't just something that you practiced occasionally, but it was the way you lived your entire life. And this is something that most people, I feel, when it comes to talking about a relationship with God, most people have a lot of difficulty with the concept of how a relationship with God will benefit them. So what we'd like to do today is focus on the benefits of having a relationship with God, rather than just sort of talking about the relationship with God. We're going to look at what are the overall benefits. And the benefits are basically, the benefits can be measured in a number of different ways. Firstly, the scope of the benefits is interesting because the scope of the benefits range from tiny minor changes in our life, so from minor right the way through to massive things that occur in our life as a result of the relationship. And when I say massive, I'm talking about so large that they affect the universe in terms of massive. Not just our galaxy or our solar system, but the entire universe. And so the scope of having a relationship with God in terms of the effect it's going to have on the universe itself is actually quite massive. We also, in terms of how personal it is, it ranges from being completely intimate in the sense that we are totally intimately involved in the relationship, right the way through to universal in its scope. So there will be things that affect us so personally, intimately, that we can't even describe them to another person properly. That's how intimate it will be. But there are also things that will affect every single person in the universe as a result of our relationship with God. So our relationship with God can actually have an impact upon every single being in the universe, not just upon ourselves. So for that reason, there's a very, very large area that it encompasses, our relationship with God. And in terms of timing, the effects of our relationship with God begin from immediate to everlasting. In other words, there are some things that will affect our relationship with God immediately, and therefore affect our life immediately as we embrace them. But some of the choices we make in our relationship with God actually are going to have an effect on your entire everlasting future. Some of the choices that you make right now even will have an effect on your entire everlasting future when you embrace a relationship with God. So what I'd like to do is discuss some of the parts about a relationship with God with you, And we can relate them to some of these, what you'd call characteristics of how the relationship affects the rest of our life. In addition, I'd like to talk to you about some of the changes that occur that we're perhaps not that aware of, or that we've not been potentially aware of, in terms of the potential of our relationship with God and how far it can go. Because most people on earth, again, we have a very limited relationship with God due to a number of constraints that we place upon it. And unfortunately, due to those constraints, we never get to experience the full impact of the relationship with God and what it can do to our lives. And as a result of that, we have a tendency then to put it as a secondary part in our life rather than a primary part of our life. It always reminds me a little of a comment that was made in the books, that Conversations with God. I don't know if any of you have read those particular books, but there was one comment that Neil Donald Walsch made to God, so-called God, in the conversation, was that he said he'd been wanting God to be involved in his life for all of his life, and God said to him, well, no, that's not really the case, because if you add up all the minutes of time that we often think about God or desire a relationship with God, often we may have a general feeling that pervades all of our life, but if we add up the actual time that we spend on the relationship, a lot of times it's a very, very short part or small part of our life. And it may even add up to only weeks in our entire life that we're really dedicated to developing a relationship with God. And the problem with that, of course, is that we never get to experience the results of a good relationship with God. And what I find on earth is that most people don't ever get to experience the results of a good relationship with God. And so other things then take priority. So if we look at it from this perspective, if we make God our number one priority in our life, that is certainly going to change a lot of our life immediately. The way that we spend our time will change immediately if we make God our number one priority in our life and our relationship with God that number one priority. If we do that, there are certain benefits that come from doing that. And what we need to do is analyse those benefits to see what are the benefits of doing that. If we put God, as most people do, down on the priority list of their life, then of course it would make sense that the benefits are not going to be as great, because it's like having a relationship, if you like, with any other person or being that surrounds us. Obviously, if we're not that dedicated to the relationship, then of course the relationship isn't as close as it could be, potentially. And therefore the benefits of having such a relationship are not going to be able to be measured as well. So what we'd like to do is to examine the benefits in terms of the true benefits and present some benefits that you may not have even thought about with regard to having a relationship with God. And then at the end, we'd like to ask, given these benefits, why would we delay developing such a relationship? So that's the general course of our action today. Is there any questions that you have at this point about that? So I'm happy to answer any questions all the way through our discussion. Now, I've made an outline which is downloadable on the net. So everything is downloadable that we do on the net from the www Divine Truth. And I hope to update it this week, the details that we talk about today. So you can go there and download the actual outline. So you don't need to make that many notes about what we're going to do. If you can just sort of be absorbed in the discussion rather than making notes, you'll probably find that you'll benefit a lot from the discussion. Okay.